Greetings vinyl community, and welcome to my October Vinyl Finds video. I'm going to start off with yet another plug for my own latest album, Rat's Alley. You can still get it, so get it while you can. And I told the story before of how the pressing plant sent me some extra copies with no covers, so I made some silly covers out of orphaned, recycled LPs. So I actually did have a request for one of these, so if you want a bogus cover for your copy of Rat's Alley, you can request it. There you go. I want to start off with an album by the progressive group from Italy, Area, who styled themselves with great irony, international popular group. Irony because their music is very avant-garde, highly progressive fusion with a certain amount of Near and Middle Eastern influence, courtesy of their singer, Egyptian-born of Greek parentage, Demetrios Stratos. And of course, they were an Italian-based group, so that does make them pretty international right there. They did have political concerns as well, as you can sort of see by the iconography that they use. And speaking of iconography, this is on the Cramps label with Frankenstein on the cover, and that is suitable for Halloween, which it is as I record this. Still in a proggy vein, the 1975 album Bundles by Soft Machine. Soft Machine, from the time of their first album until their seventh, which was simply titled Soft Machine 7, did not use guitar in their lineup. This was their first proper album with a guitarist, and that guitarist, well, what a guitarist, it was Alan Holdsworth. This is the only album they made with Alan Holdsworth as a member of the band, so as you can expect, it's a very nice fusion-based effort with a cool sort of ambient-ish flute-based Floating World, very appropriately titled, on the as the final track. Peter Hammill, 1978 album, The Future Now. This album kicks off with a track called Pushing 30. Oh, he was so old then. He was pushing 30. And this comes with the insert, with the interesting fold-out that reveals his beard stunt. So far from pushing 30, Peter Hammill has just released a new album, In Translation. This is his first album of cover versions of other people's material. Fairly unexpected. A lot of it is from the American Standards tradition. Some of it is from the South American tradition, and some is from the European classical tradition. There's a piece by Fauré, there's a piece by Mahler. This is on white vinyl. And in 2021, Peter is no longer pushing 30. And I interpret that Italia tracksuit, as well as the international nature of the material used, as being a bit of a two-finger salute to Brexit, which is a concept he laments in the liner notes and has caused him great inconvenience, shall we say, as a touring artist. Renaissance, the first album by the Annie Haslam fronted version of Renaissance, with the great Hypnosis cover artwork. This is on the Sovereign label, but a later pressing with the purple capital logo and the Sovereign logo below it. Very cool album. Although Annie Haslam is very much the front person for the band, the two sort of big tracks on here are wordless, even though they do have vocals. The opening track, title track Prologue, which is the one that used to get FM airplay in my neck of the woods, and the final track, Raja Khan, composed by future Renaissance guitarist, or I think past and future. They were in a lot of transition. They had such a huge membership turnover around this time, having started out with the Keith and Jane Relf version of the band and then completely changed personnel. So by this point, there were none of the originals left, even though it was only the third album. And Raja Khan features guest Francis Monkman from Curved Air on synthesizer, on a long, sort of sinuous, Middle Eastern sounding instrumental. Very cool piece. Steel Eye Span, another transitional album. This was their transitional album towards a more rock-based sound. I recently showed their album Now We Are Six, which was their first album after adding Nigel Pegram as a full-time drummer, because they'd previously done several albums without drums at all. This album does include some drumming, courtesy of bass player Rick Kemp. And so it is a transition to the more rock-based sound that they adopted. This is on Chrysalis and is not a white label, but it did come with the little promotional insert thingy that Warner's put on some. At this time, Chrysalis, I think, was being distributed by Warner Brothers in America. So it's rather interesting to see this little piece attached to it. And yet another transition by a folky type band. This is the third album by Straubs, just a collection of antiques and curios, a live recording, and their first with a rhythm section of bass and drums, plus Rick Wakeman on keyboards. There the lads are. There's Rick. And Rick Wakeman does do a solo titled Temperament of Mind, which harkens forward to the kind of solo set piece that he would do with Yes. Record Store Day release. I didn't do Record Store Day this year. I haven't done it for a couple of years now. Uriah Heep, The Magician's Birthday. I just thought this was very interesting for the cover artwork reimagined by Roger Dean, in a much more muted color palette than he had originally done. And this is on that type of vinyl. Debut album from Jefferson Airplane. Jefferson Airplane Takes Off. Little needs to be said about this. Of course, this is the band with their original singer, Signe Anderson. Another San Francisco classic group, Santana, with their album Welcome. Great album, very jazzy, with Leon Thomas joining them on vocals, providing his unique vocalizing style. Phil Ochs, Greatest Hits. Of course, this is not a Greatest Hits album at all. That's ironic, as is the Elvis reference on the back cover. I've never shown much, if any, country music on this channel. I don't listen to a lot of country music, particularly not modern country music, which is basically just any rock sung with twangy vocals. But one modern country artist that I do have a lot of time for is Lucinda Williams. This is her new release, Bob's Back Pages, her covers of Bob Dylan songs. Love Lucinda Williams' voice, love the snarl in it, and that can't go wrong with the Dylan covers. Despite the title and the cover art both being references to Bob Dylan's early period, his all-acoustic period, she doesn't cover any of that era. The earliest material, the only 60s songs that she covers are two from Highway 61. The opening track for this album is It Takes a Lot to Laugh, It Takes a Train to Cry. She also does a version of Queen Jane Approximately. She actually draws from a pretty restricted pool of Bob's albums. There are a couple of songs from Blood on the Tracks, There's some material from Infidels and Oh Mercy, and a couple of songs from Time Out of Mind. So she really concentrates on a select few classic Dylan albums, very much ones that are in the top echelon of Dylan albums for their respective eras to draw from. And this is a three-sided album, one of those with an etching on the fourth side. So let me see if I can get this visible on the camera there. I think that's getting the reflection from the window in there. There we go. That looks like, there we go. Camera's doing funny things. It's going, what is he showing me? What is this? So, and another three-sided album of covers. This is A Day in the Life, Impressions of Pepper, a recreation or reimagining of Sgt. Pepper by current jazz artists for the Impulse label. And this is very experimental. So a lot of these tracks, it's even difficult to hear where the connection is to the original piece. Mary Halverson does a very squiggly version of With a Little Help from My Friends with some bizarre pitch bend pieces. Wildflower doing Getting Better. That's one where it's particularly difficult to say, this is getting better? Where's the tune? I don't know. Also on Impulse, also by various artists. Impulse Artists on Tour from 1974. This features Gatto Barbieri, Keith Jarrett, John Clemmer, Sam Rivers, and Michael White. Various concerts in 1974, most of it from the Mantra Festival that year. And one of my favorite albums of all time, the new Blue Note 80 edition of Eric Dolphy's Out to Lunch. Great, great stuff. I'm still looking for an original copy someday, but for now, that's taken up residence in the collection. On ECM, Art Landa and Rubisa Patrol Desert Marauders, with Art Landa on piano, Mark Isham on trumpet and flugelhorn, Bill Douglas on bass and flute, Kurt Wertman on drums. And that has that vintage ECM 70s sound. Key by Meredith Monk on the Lovely Music label. This is a reissue of an early 70s release, I think a private release. This came out, this version was released in 1977. This is sort of in the Yoko Ono vein. I'd place it somewhere between Yoko Ono and The Sound of a Fly Trapped in a Bottle. So if that sounds as attractive to you as it does to me, there you go. Charles Ives Symphony No. 4, conducted by Leopold Stokowski, as well as two supplemental conductors. This music is so complex it requires a second conductor to help the primary conductor on the podium, as well as a third conductor to handle a smaller group of strings and harp that's placed apart from the main orchestra. So that gives you a sort of inkling of Ives's way of handling music, where music is placed in space. There's a spatial approach to music. There's a collage approach where one part of music may not belong to another part, and they go their own ways. It's like the famous image of Ives hearing marching bands in his town center going past each other playing different music at the same time, which is an effect that he would try to recreate in his own compositions. Big Bill Brunzi and Pete Seeger in concert doing a lot of very, very popular, well-known songs. They do Midnight Special, This Train is Bound for Glory, Crawdad Hole, The Glory of Love, Bill Bailey. Just a pleasant, recorded for the radio, folky experience. Mazzy recently did a piece on psychedelic folk, or acid folk as I call it, freak folk as he I think was his primary term. It made me think of this. This isn't really that folky. It's very psychedelic. It does have a considerable country influence. Earth Opera, in their second album, The Great American Eagle Tragedy, Peter Rowan heads the band, guitar and vocals. David Grisman on mandolin, mandocello, piano, and alto saxophone. Who knew that David Grisman played saxophone? As well as Paul Dillon on drums and John Nagy on bass. And a number of interesting guests, including John Cale on viola, and Bill Keith on pedal steel, who gives the opening track very much that kind of late 60s, early 70s country rock sound that the Byrds and the Grateful Dead were mining around that period. But much of the album is very, very psychedelic, so cool stuff. Buffy St. Marie, It's My Way. This is the album where she performs her song, The Universal Soldier, which is, of course, made a hit by Donovan. She also does a song accompanying herself on, I believe this is it, the mouth bow, which works like a jaw harp or Jew's harp, creating a twang that she can articulate by changing the size of the mouth, the oral cavity. The song that she uses that on is Cripple Creek, and it makes me wonder about the band's song Up on Cripple Creek, which of course is no relation musically to the traditional Cripple Creek, but Buffy St. Marie's performance with that twangy mouth bow, could that be linked to the weird twangy sound in the band recording where Garth Hudson is playing a clavinet through a wah-wah pedal? Finally, good old Rolling Stones, an album I have a lot of attachment for, December's Children. I think back in the day, this was the only old Stones album I had early on in my record collecting days. Old meaning pre-Satanic Majesties. A lot of the modern Stones that I was listening to was Satanic and Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, and Get Your Yayas Out. The old ones with the like Andrew Loog Oldham liner notes, those were old Stones. This is very much, although it uses the same cover photo as the UK album Out of Our Heads, it's almost completely different collection of songs. It's got a couple of live tracks, the live version of Route 66. It's of course got the big hit Get Off of My Cloud, as well as the version of As Tears Go By with the strings. So that's it. I hope that was a quick enough whip through to make this less than another half-hour video. So thank you very much for watching. Be well, and I will talk with you again soon. Bye-bye for now.
I put a spell on you. Because you're mine. I don't like the things that you do. I can't stand it. I can't stand the way you run around. I can't stand the way you